When the Buddha defined what is meant by the world in his teaching, it's a bit different from the way an average person describes it. When we think of the world, we think of the planet Earth, the land around us, the sky with planets and stars and galaxies. This is what we think of as the world, a collection of living beings, people out there. But in the Buddha's teaching, he very explicitly says that whereby one is a perceiver of the world and a conceiver of the world, that is what is called the world in this Dhamma and discipline, this Dhamma Vinaya. And what is it whereby one is a perceiver of the world, loka sanyi in Pali, or a conceiver of the world, lokamani? And he answers his own question by saying the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, the mind. This is the means whereby one is a perceiver of the world and a conceiver of the world. So the world is the world of our senses. That's the only world we can meaningfully talk about. The Buddha, in this respect, takes what is called a phenomenological point of view in terms of Western philosophy, rather than speaking in terms about the world, the universe, as if it wasn't being perceived by this being. He brings it right back to our individual experience. This is the only world we can meaningfully talk about, is what we have known through our language, our education, our conditioning, our nationality. Here it is. So each one of us doesn't experience the world. We experience our mind's version of the world. The way our mind puts together its version, its approximation of reality. That's what we live with. And if my version of reality matches yours, then we live harmoniously. If mine is radically different from yours, then there can be trouble. But the more that we recognize that what we experience is not the world, but just one version of it, then, if there's wisdom, we can live more harmoniously with other beings. We don't assume that my version is the reality. It's like the person asking Master Xuanhua if it was okay to kill the ants that were moving into the kitchen. He said, I'm an ant. From the ant's perspective, they don't want to die. So we might philosophize about, well, what's the real perspective on the world, on the universe? Not through the filter of a human mind. What's that like? And the Buddha simply points out that it's impossible to speak about. What scale do you want to measure things by? You say a second is a short time, but is it? In some respects, a second is a gigantically long time, vastly long. We might say a whole kalpa, a whole eon, hundreds of billions of years is a long time. Is it? Not for a Brahmagog. It's just a finger snap. So what do we measure things by? So the Buddha said, don't theorize about all that kind of stuff. It's not useful. Know your mind's version of the world as its experience. This is where we bring our attention. In terms of dependent origination and the exit points, again, this refers to that third exit point of Nirodha, dukkha Nirodha, the non-arising of dukkha and the establishment of vicca, awakened awareness. Because if that awareness is present, is strong, then it's known that in this very moment, what is being experienced by each one of us is hearing, feeling, smelling, tasting, touching, seeing, thinking, arising and passing away. If there's a full quality of mindfulness and wisdom, then there's an appreciation that the world happens in the mind. It's known in the mind. It arises, takes shape and dissolves in the mind, in this space of awareness. So when that's appreciated, as we talked about before, there's a quality of stillness, spaciousness. The world flows through this space of awareness, which is ever present, which doesn't go anywhere, to which awareness does not apply. Awareness is unlocated, doesn't have a place. It's a quality of non-abiding. It isn't anywhere. But it's the very space within which all the patterns of the world, here and there, near and far, past and future, they all arise, take shape and dissolve. So with the meditation right now, is to recognize there's hearing, there's feeling, thinking, smelling, tasting, touching, arising and passing away. And the mind puts it all together and says, this moment, Friday morning, Chaisai, 10-day retreat. Gives it a label. In a related teaching to this about the world, the Buddha was approached by a deva, Rohitasa, who said to the Buddha, in my last lifetime I was a yogi, and I made the vow to walk to the end of the world. And even though I could walk through the air as well as across the land and the water, I couldn't get to the end of the world by walking. So, can I ask you, is it possible to reach the end of the world by walking? And the Buddha very famously responded by saying, it's impossible to reach the end of the world by walking, but I tell you that unless you reach the end of the world, you won't reach the end of suffering. So that's a mysterious teaching. But it's using the phrase, the end of the world, in two different ways. So Rohitasa was trying to get to the end of the world in terms of geography, in terms of three-dimensional space, time, individual identity. And that's impossible. You can't walk to the end of the world in terms of the conditioned realm. But then the Buddha changes gear and says, well, you can reach the end of the world, and if you do, then you will also reach the end of suffering. And he goes on to explain, it's in this very body, this 6-foot-long body, with its perceptions and its thoughts, there is the world, the origin of the world, the cessation of the world, and the way leading to the cessation of the world. So right there, he's comparing the world, loka. He's aligning that, comparing that directly with dukkha, as in the Four Noble Truths. This might seem a bit of a negative perspective, but what he's saying is that the mind that thinks of the world as being solid, external, real, that's what needs to come to an end. So the end of the world doesn't mean the planet bursting into flames or dissolving into dust, but rather it means something else. It means the ending of the solidity of what we think of as the world. So where is it that the Buddha can be talking about? If it's in this very body with its perceptions and thoughts, there's the world, the origin of the world, the cessation of the world, and the way leading to the cessation of the world. It's this very awareness, this quality of the vicca dhatu, the element of awareness. This is where the world ends. All right, now, the awareness of your own citta, this is where sounds, feelings, thoughts, emotions, this is where they are known. It's where they arise, where they cease. So this very citta, this heart of ours, this is where the world arises and where it ends. Well, earlier on this week, I talked about the unspoken backdrop to the first two discourses, the Dhammacakka Sutta, the turning of the wheel. The unspoken backdrop to that is that if there is an ultimate reality, that's the fundamental nature of all things, including our own being, why are we not happy? Why are we not free? The unspoken backdrop to the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta, the discourse on not self, is that the Atman is supposed to be Nicca, Sukha, and Atta, permanent, blissful, and totally who and what we are. Sat Chit Ananda in the Sanskrit rendering. Being, consciousness, bliss. So if the Atman is supposed to be totally blissful, if our self is totally blissful, comfortable, permanent, how can that be associated with this set of thoughts and perceptions? As the Buddha says, if the body was atta, that was part of the Atman, then you could have of the body, be like this, don't be like that. Your feelings, you could say to your feelings, don't be like this, be like that. But our feelings, our bodies, our perceptions, they don't obey personal will. So these must all be anatta. So the unspoken backdrop to that teaching is that if there was an Atman, an Atta, a true individual self, then again we would be blissful, secure, invulnerable, safe all the time. There'd be permanence, blissfulness, true individual being. But there isn't. So why is that? Well, the unspoken backdrop to the third teaching, the fire sermon, where the Buddha talks about all is burning, sabang bhikkhave aditang, all is burning. And what is the all that is burning? The eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, the mind. So the unspoken backdrop to that third teaching is the world is out there and it's reasonably stable, predictable, reliable. And so this teaching is about the Buddha saying the world is not out there, it's in here. And it's not stable, it's burning. It's not reliable, not permanent, nothing absolute. When we appreciate that the world happens in the mind, it's known here in the mind, arises and passes away here in the mind, then we can attune the heart to the space within which the world arises, takes shape and dissolves. That stillness within which all the movement happens. The silence that's behind and permeating all the sound. The space that surrounds and permeates all the form. It's always here. Can't go anywhere else. Ever present. So when there's a recollection of the world as arising and passing here in the space of awareness, there's a peacefulness, an ease. The heart is free from becoming. There's the patterns of nature still arising and passing, perceptions and thoughts and sounds continually come and go, but the heart is not tied to those. Another of the very useful phrases to reflect upon, a dialogue between Venerable Sariputta and Venerable Mahakotita. When Mahakotita was asking Sariputta what was the details of a state of profound meditation where Sariputta had let go of attachment to all the sense activity, Mahakotita asked him, so at that moment, at that time, what were you aware of? And Venerable Sariputta replied, Bhava Nirodho Nibbānang. The mind was aware that the ending of becoming is Nibbana. The ending of becoming is Nibbana. So it doesn't mean that all the conditions of the world vanish, that suddenly we can't hear or see or feel or smell or think. The patterns of perception are still arising and passing. But when there's no identification, no grasping of those patterns, what's experienced is Nibbana, peacefulness. If the heart doesn't tie itself to the wheel of becoming, it doesn't become. It's as simple as that. So we can know, we can realize that genuine peacefulness that's ever present by recollecting this quality of stillness, spaciousness. As we sit here, knowing the world arises and passes, and in the walking meditation too, that which knows the body walking isn't going anywhere. It's ever present, completely still. So we can cultivate this quality of timelessness, presence, this easefulness, even while there's a lot of activity, busyness going on. That profound peace, space, that profound ease can be known, can be realized at any time.